Earhart from Global Gardener. A little while ago I told you about my story about my first tree change when I was a single young woman buying a 5-acre bush block and creating a new life out there. It was an adventure. Learned a lot along the way because there wasn't a lot of information to get hold of in these days. Actually, there was nothing. There wasn't the internet. So I had to go by the seat of my pants and made lots of mistakes, of course, which is part of the journey. But it would have been easier to have found a lot of this information beforehand, especially considering finding the block that would suit for me and my lifestyle. So 5 or 6 years later, I had sold this block. Then it was time for another tree change experience. But this time I had a partner and we wanted to launch an organic small crop farm. So our criteria was a bit different. So we had to look for a region that had a good climate and a long growing season. We needed water. And this time I wanted a house. In my first tree change experience, I lived in a large shed. It was very comfortable with all the mod cons. I had electricity and running water and telephone. But yeah, this time I wanted a house. I also wanted services, as in electricity, and not too far from town. And also access, and the block needed to be fairly flat. It's a lot easier to work with growing crops if you have a flat block of land, so I didn't want any steep hills. And also we needed to be close to some type of market to sell our produce. And I had learned a lot from our first tree change experience. So we ended up finding the perfect area in the Wide Bay region, which is about 5-hour drive from Brisbane in Queensland, so in the subtropics. So we found a property within our budget, because that's always the foundation, isn't it, our budget. It was about 12 kilometres from town, so it wasn't too far away. It was a flat block. It had an older house, about 60 years old, a 3-bedroom cottage. And being a rural subdivision, it was about 5 or 6 years old. It had been moved to the site, which meant it had new plumbing and new wiring in the house. So that was a bonus. It had town water. So that was positive. All you had to do to turn on the tap. However, it was also costly. And the markets, well, our customer market base would be the markets, as in the weekend markets. Every Saturday and Sunday in the Wide Bay, there were several markets to choose from. So we knew we could sell our produce. The soil wasn't all that great. The structure wasn't very good. It crusted easily. So that was part of our plan to improve the soil so we could grow good quality vegetables. So it's all a process to develop your property. It doesn't happen overnight. So not only did our house need renovating, that takes time. And then we needed to set up a plant nursery. So we were growing our plants from seed, a lot more cost effective, takes a little bit more time. And then we had to improve the soil so we can grow vegetables. So it took about 18 months before we could harvest our first crop. So at first we designed the property. We were property designers, garden designers. So we knew how to design it, where the gardens were going to be, where we wanted shade, where we needed a bit of screening from the neighbours, irrigation, where the chook run was going to be. So you all had to design all of this. So it takes a little bit of time before you get to know your property. and plan it ahead. Then we contracted the local farmer who had machinery, tractors, to rip our soil, and then we put in natural fertilizers, which is like cracker dust, to put natural minerals in the soil, growing a green manure crop that not only would put in nitrogen in the soil, but also the much needed organic matter, and turning that over, planting shade trees on the property. It gets quite hot there in summer, so we needed shade. So it was all step by step, but if you have a plan, not only a business model and a business plan, but how to develop your property, it's so much easier. You have a template, and this is where property design is very important. So even though we had learned a lot, or I had learned a lot from my first Treechange experience, this was a different ball game. So we were reading, there was a bit more information available about small crop growing, organic small crop growing. There were a lot of farming in the area, but they were conventional farmers. How we were keeping spray drift away from our property. So we were joining an organic small crop group that would meet once a month, and where we would exchange information. Also getting hold of seeds, heritage variety seeds that we could save our own seeds. So it was a real learning curve, a lot of hard work, because we did it manually. We were on a tight budget, and we did a lot of things manually. And you're learning as you go along. So we were working 7 days a week. When we weren't out there in the garden, then we were inside the house renovating. In hindsight, that was a bit much. You've got to be realistic. There's only 7 days a week. Establishing your property and renovating your house is a bit much. So when we were setting up this property, because it was also a business, I wish I had a bit of a framework to work with. There were also so many questions, and cost us time and money, and a lot of energy. And like I said, we could have planned it better. Yeah, so we should have had a bit of a time plan. What we were going to do when. Perhaps, work in the garden for, a couple of months, and then come back and do the house. Or now I know, as an experienced tree changer and a horticulturist, I would have made the design, would have planted shade trees, because trees always take a long time to grow, planted the shade trees, and I would have grown the green manure crops maybe for a year. So while the soil was naturally improving, I should have then gone inside and renovated the house, and not trying to do it all at once. We were spreading ourselves out too thin, and then you can have a burnout. And I suppose if you have children, have a family, even more so. So that is something to think about. So it was a great experience, and we produced fantastic nutrient-dense vegetables that tasted really good. We'd also planted fruit trees, but they take a lot longer, of course, to produce fruit. So that was a great experience that taught us lesson for Treechange number 3. But that happened a bit later. So it was a great experience, got to know the Wide Bay area very well, good climate there, met wonderful people in the subdivision who all came from somewhere else, just like us. And we were quite close knit, and we would swap produce. I remember a lady down the road, she had quails, the little birds with nice eggs. So when I went to the markets, I used to sell her pickled quail eggs. And then she had a kumquat tree, way too many of that she could use, so I would then get the kumquats and I would make marmalade and sell, and then I would give her fresh vegetables from my farm. So it was a great community, really enjoyed living there. But life changes and your path goes somewhere else. So this is also one of the reasons that I developed the Treechange Accelerator course, to help people who are going to set up their business, either full-time or part-time on their property, how to go about that and how to know what to look for your specific business, because it's all different, and also how to pace yourself, because you don't want to burn out. You want to be there for the long haul, and have a plan so you don't diddle around and waste time. You want to have the framework to do things in the right order, so you can achieve your goal in the shortest possible time and still enjoy the journey. So if you're interested in a tree change, or that's where you want to go to the country, fantastic move. Have a look at my website and look up the Treechange Accelerator course. You won't regret it. So next time I see you, I would tell you about my third tree change, which was very different part of the country, but still most enjoyable. I'll see you next time.